Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about the supply and demand. In this session, we will cover the following concepts: definition of demand and the definition of supply as well, the law of demand, which explains the relationship between the price and the quantity, and the law of supply, which represents the relationship between the price and quality and quantity, market equilibrium, movement along the curve versus shift when we have a movement and when we will have a shift, factors that affect demand and factors that affect the supply curve. Let us to move over here. Now when we talk about the demand, in general, before we go to the definition, demand represents what? The consumers or people who are the buyers or people who are willing to buy. Demand represents us, individuals who are willing to buy things. Demand refers to a buyer's willingness and ability to buy a given product at a specific price in a given period of time. Now over here, if I decided to go and buy something, that means I'm here representing the demand curve, represent the people who would like to buy a certain product. Let us to look at this graph, the demand schedule and the demand curve. Usually, as an individual, we always love to buy things in a bargain, right? So basically what will happen over here? The lower the price, you will buy more from the product, right? So the higher the price, what will happen? The opposite. You will buy less of the product. Because as individual, we always care about the price. We would like to get a bargain over here or a good deals. So if we look at this graph, over here we have two curves. Over here, this curve represents the price in dollar. Over here, this is the price. And here we have the quantity. This table over here, we have the price and the quantity. At the price of $300, we have the quantity that you are willing to buy at 30 units. When the price of the product is 30, you are willing to buy 30 units. Okay, let us look at the second option. When the price goes down to 250, what happened over here? There is increase in what? In the quantity. So when the price is 250, you are willing to buy a 35 units of what? Over here, the player per month, a million player per month. So over here, we can see that when the price decrease, what happened to the quantity? Increase. As the price of the player falls, the quantity demanded, what happened? Rise. At the price of 200, what happened again over here? The quantity increased to 40. Again, when the price dropped to 150, the quantity again increased to 45. When it reached 200, the quantity demanded reached to 50. So we can say over here the relationship between the price and quantity is what? So over here we can see that what we have when we link all these dots together, we will have a downward sloping curve. This downward sloping curve represents the demand curve over here. Now let us talk about the law of demand. As we can see previously, the higher the price, the lower the quantity. The higher the price, the lower the quantity. The lower the price, the higher the quantity. So there is a negative relationship between the price and the quantity. So over here, there is a negative relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. Ceteris paribus. So the curve is downward sloping because of the negative relationship between the price and the quantity. The higher the price, as we say, the higher the price, what will happen? The lower the quantity over here. While the lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded. So we can see over here we have what? A negative relationship between the price and the quantity. That's why the demand curve is downward sloping. As the price of the coffee decrease and nothing else changed, which is ceteris paribus, the person increase his what or her consumption of coffee. The lower the price, that means you are able to buy more coffee. For example, if you go to Starbucks, you would like to have a coffee. Usually, it costs you 1.7 BD. Okay, you would like to have more, but because you are in tight budget, so you can take only one coffee per day. If the price drop to 1 BD, over here you can buy what? 2 coffees a day. So what will happen over here? Because the price drop, that means your demand for coffee will increase. And this shows us what the negative relationship over here between the price and the quantity demanded. Now, when we have a change in the price, that means we are moving from one point to other point. Now, let's look at the graph over here. Now, when the price of the coffee was $5 at this point, the quantity is what? 4 units. You can buy 4 cups of coffee. Now, when there is a drop of the price to $3, what happened over here? There is also increase in the quantity of coffee over here. So this shows us what? There is a movement along the demand curve. Over here, when there's a change in the price, always keep in mind that will cause a movement along the demand curve. So over here, because we are moving from one point to the second point. For example, we are moving from point A to point B. The movement here is along the demand curve, so it's called change in the quantity demanded. When there is only a movement changing in the price, this will call it what? A movement, we call it change in the quantity demanded. Now let us to move to the supply curve. The supply curve, now if the demand represents the individual or the consumers, a supply curve, from the name it will represent the suppliers. The supplier over here, or the supply, refers to the willingness of the seller to sell any given goods at a specific price at a given time period. Now if we look over here at this graph, now over here we are looking from what? From the supplier point of view. In general, before we look at the graph, now over here, you as a supplier, always you want to make what? High profit. You need more revenue, more profit. So over here, when the prices will go up, what will happen? You are willing to sell more product. So if you are trying to sell more products over here, that means what? You have the prices will, you want the prices to go up. If the prices goes down, that means you are willing to sell what? Less products over here. Let us look at the graph to know the type of relationship and how the supply curves looks. Now when the price is 250, okay, we can see that the quantity supply 45. If the price is 250, that means over here the supplier is willing to supply 45 units in the market. Okay. Now, if the price over here was 300, of course, as a supplier, you would like to sell more, right? If a supplier, you would like to sell more product, because the higher the price, the more profit it will be for you, the more profitable. Okay, let us look at the third price. So as the price of the players rise, the quantity supplied increase. Because over here you are representing what? The seller or supplier. Again, so over here we can see, if we link all these points together, we will have this curve which we call it the supply curve. The supply curve, it's upward sloping curve. As we can see over here, the higher the price, the higher the quantity demanded, the higher the quantity supplied over here. The law of supply. As we can see, the supply curve, it has a relationship with the price and quantity. The higher the price, the higher the quantity over here supplied, because of course the supplier would like to do more profit, would like to have more profit over here. So as we can see, they have what? A positive relationship between the price and the quantity. Supply ceteris paribus. So the supply curve is upward sloping. The higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied, and the vice versa. That means the lower the price, the lower the quantity supplied. So over here, again, we'll go back to this example, which is the price of coffee and the quantity of coffee. Now, as the price of coffee increase, okay, as a supplier, what you will do over here, you will offer more coffee because you want to sell more products. So over here, what will happen? A firm will increase their quantity of coffee supplied. This is what we have over here. We have a positive relationship because the higher the prices, the higher the quantity supplied. And if there is a change in the price moving from one point to the other, over here we will have the same thing, which we call it a movement along the supply curve, like moving from this point over here to this point over here. There is a change in the quantity, there's change in the price. The price goes up. Because the price goes up over here, what happened to the quantity supplied as well increase from 12 to 15 units. Now over here, when there is a change in the price, it causes us what? A movement along the supply curve. So over here, when we have a movement along the supply curve, we call it change in the quantity supplied. Okay, now we know how the supply curve looks and how the demand curve looks. Demand curve, as we said, it's a downward sloping curve. It's a downward sloping curve because it has a negative relationship between the price and the quantity, and the supply curve, it's upward sloping curve because it has what? A positive relationship between the price and the quantity. Now over here, when we look over here, when we put the supply curve and the demand curve together, we will end up, or we will have this point where there is intersect between the supply and demand curve. At this point, I will highlight it in yellow so you can look at this point over here. This point over here, we call it the market equilibrium point. The market equilibrium where the quantity demanded for the product equal to the quantity supplied. When the quantity demanded, it's equal to the quantity supplied. Like the demand equal to what? To the supply. At this point, where both parties, consumers and suppliers, are happy, they meet at this point, which is equal to what? To this to a market equilibrium. Like any equilibrium situation, when this happens, there is no pressure from any direction that would move the market out of a status of equilibrium, changes the price. Of course, if there is changes, the demand change at certain time, there is increase in the demand, that means the prices, it will cause a change. It will cause either a shift, that we'll talk about it later on, or a shift for the demand or the supply curve. But at this point, you need to know that this point, the intersect between the demand and the supply, which we call it over here the equilibrium point. Now, if they ask you, for example, what is the equilibrium quantity, you will look where is the intersect between the supply and the demand, and you will look down over here, this is what we call it, the equilibrium quantity, and over here, this is the equilibrium price. Now we'll talk about the factors that cause a shift in the demand curve. Now there are certain factors that will cause a shift in the demand curve. What do we mean by a shift? A shift when we have a shift, or it's either shift to the right or to the left. Let me draw for you a graph, a small graph over here. For example, as we know, a demand curve over here is a downward sloping curve. Now there is a certain factors that will affect the demand curve. Either it will let the demand curve to shift to this side, or it will shift to the other side. Okay, so over here is the demand. This is the main demand curve over here. There are certain factors that will cause a shift to the demand curve either to the right or to the left. What are these factors that will cause a shift in the demand curve? These are 5 factors. First of all, we'll talk about the income. Income, there is a relationship between the demand and the income, depends on whether the goods is considered to be a normal or inferior goods. Now over here, when we talk about the income, if there is a change in the income, either the income increase, okay, your income increase by a certain percentage, or a decrease in a certain percentage. Over here, this depends on the type of the product. Now, if we have a normal goods, the normal goods, which are representing a goods which the increase when your income increase. Your income, when your income increase, you will start buying these normal goods. Now over here, when we talk about the inferior goods, it's when the prices, when your salary or your income decrease, you will start consume more from the inferior goods. Let me to give you an example. Now over here, if your income increase, what will happen? Basically, you will go and buy certain branded things or item or luxurious item because your income increase, right? So over here, you have more money to spend, but will happen the opposite. When your income decrease, the demand for the inferior goods will increase. For example, now if your income decrease and you need to buy a car, are you going to buy a brand new car or a second-hand car? By default, you will go and buy a second-hand car. Okay, this type of a product so the demand for this type of product, the inferior goods, will increase when your income decrease. But the normal goods, it will increase when your income increase. Let us to go to the second thing, which is the price of the related goods. Goods are related if they are a substitute or a complement. A substitute product, which is a goods and services that can be used for the same purpose. An increase of the price of one will increase the demand for the other goods. For example, Pepsi and Cola. Pepsi and Cola, basically, they consider to be the same, right? Because over here, when we talk about Pepsi and Cola, almost they taste the same. There is no difference, but there's a slight difference, but basically they taste the same. So over here, when the price of Pepsi, for example, increase, people will shift to buy Coca-Cola. Okay, that's what will happen. Okay, what about the complement goods, which are the goods and services that are used together? A decrease in the price of one good will increase the demand for the other goods. These are like completing each other. For example, if you decided to buy a printer, okay? So if you decide to buy a printer over here, you need to run the printer, or to let the printer to work, you need an ink, okay? So over here, if the price of the printer decrease, that means will cause an increase in the demand of what? Of the ink, because people will buy more printers, but to run the printers, let them work, they need an ink. So over here, what will happen? The demand for the ink will increase over here. So because these products, we can't separate them, we use them together. So we call them the complement goods. So over here, if the decrease in the price of one product will increase the demand for the other product, or the increase the price of one product, that will cause a decrease in the demand for the other product. This type of product, which we call them the related, either it will be a substitute, which they are almost the same, or the complement, which they complete each other. Now let us to move to the second slide to complete the factors. Over here, the population. By default, the larger the population, the more increase in the population, what will happen? Will increase the demand. So the demand will increase, which will cause a shift to the demand curve. That will cause an increase in the demand curve. Or it will cause, if there's a decrease in the population, for example, now over here, let's say in China, okay? Now, well, let us to give an example about corona disease. Now, corona disease over there, we can see there is the death rate increase in China. So that means what will happen to the population will decrease. By time, what will happen over here? There is an effect. So the demand will decrease because the number of people or the population in China decrease. Consumer preference of a good. Sometimes they started to prefer a certain product among the others. For example, in Bahrain, as we can see, people over here, they prefer to buy a Toyota cars. Okay, so when they like to buy Toyota cars, what will happen? The preference for certain type of a product will increase. So that will cause what? A shift in the demand curve. Future expected prices. Now, if I'm expecting the future prices to increase, okay, I'm expecting the future prices to increase. What will happen to the demand right now? It will increase. Why? Because you are thinking to buy the product now at a lower price because the prices will go up. And the opposite, if the prices, the expected prices to decrease, okay, over here, what will happen? You will not buy anything at the time being. You will wait when the prices change and it goes down to buy to benefit from the lower prices. This is how it works. Let's go more into detail. The impact of the change in the income. The higher the income, decrease the demand for the inferior goods. By default, if your income increase, are you going to buy a second-hand car or a second-hand mobile or buying these like from a charity shop or whatever? Of course, no. So your higher income decrease the demand for the inferior goods. So over here, what will happen? As we can see, when your income increase, okay, you will stop buying this type of a product. So what will happen over here? It will decrease the demand on the inferior goods. So it will move on this direction to decrease. There is a decrease. It will shift to the left. So the demand curve will shift from this point to this point. Okay, now let us look for the second part. A higher income increase the demand for the normal goods. Of course, if your income is more, you will spend more on a certain product. Luxurious product, branded product, all these things. So when you look over here, when your income increase, what will happen to the demand for the normal goods? Will increase. So it will shift in this direction. Now let's talk about the impact of the change in the price of related goods. Now when we talk about the related goods, we talk about two types, either the substitute or the complement. Now over here, the price of the pounds of the hamburgers, over here, there is a change in the price of the hamburgers. There is increase in the price of the hamburger. The price of the hamburger used to be at, let's say over here, for example, it's $5 and now it reached to $10. Okay, so when there is increased by 5% over here or 50% over here in the price, that's mean what will happen? This will affect the demand for the burgers. So what will happen over here? The quantity of hamburgers, what will happen? Will it drop? As we can see over here, when there is a change in the price increase, what happened to the demand? The demand decrease. It used to be, let's say, 30, and now it reached to 15 units only. So there is a 50% decrease in the quantity. Okay. So at this point over here, we can see there is a movement. When there is a change in the price, will cause change in the quantity demanded. So there is a movement along the demand curve. Now, what about the demand for the complement good, which is ketchup? Usually you would like to have the burgers with ketchup. So over here, when the demand for the burgers decrease, okay, because of the prices, people, they don't want to buy. So what will happen to the demand for the complement, which is the ketchup? Of course, it will decrease and it will shift to the left, because no one is eating hamburgers, and usually we eat the hamburgers with what? With the ketchup. So over here, the demand will decrease for the ketchup. But what about substitute products? For example, chicken. So over here, people, instead of eating hamburgers, they will go and have what? Chicken. So the demand for the chicken will increase and it will shift to the right. So over here, that's what will happen when we are talking about the impact of the related product. Now again, so one product will affect substitute. We'll talk about the substitute and the complement. Now when the price, as we mentioned over here, the price of the burgers increase, it causes a movement along the demand curve because of the change in the quantity demanded. What will happen to the quantity over here? It will drop. So if there is a less demand for the burger, that means the complement product over here, it will decrease the demand for the ketchup. People will not buy ketchup because they are not eating burgers. So over here, it will shift the demand curve to what? To the left. At every single point over here, we can see at this price, for example, they used to buy this quantity before, and now they are buying a less quantity of what? Of the ketchup. So over here, because of the shift of the demand curve. What about the substitute product, which is the chicken? People will stop eating burgers, but they need to have a protein, so they will move to the chicken. So the chicken demand will increase over here, and this will shift the demand curve to the right. As you can see, at every single point over here, you can see that what? The quantity demanded increase at every single point compared to what? To the previous curve, which is demand A. Okay? Okay, let us to look at this table, which will give us a good idea about the factors when will cause a shift to the demand curve to the right. Okay, now over here, let us to start with the income. Now the income with the normal goods. Now if your income increase over here, what will happen? The demand for the normal goods will increase, of course, because if your income increase over here, that means you will buy more of branded luxurious products. You will buy new product, not a second hand. So what will happen? The demand for the normal product will increase, and this will cause what? A shift to the right over here for the demand curve. So the demand curve will move from D1 to D2. Again, if your income over here decrease, that means the demand for the inferior goods will increase. So over here you will buy more of what? Of second-hand products from all these type of a product that are considered to be an inferior product. So over here the demand as well will increase for the inferior goods when your income decreases. If your income decreases, that means the demand for the inferior goods will increase, and this will cause a shift to the demand curve to the right. The price of the substitute product. Now if the price of, let's say, Pepsi increase, okay, that means what will happen to the demand of Coca-Cola? Will increase as well. So it will shift to the right. It will move from D1 to D2. Again, if the price of the complementary product or goods decrease, imagine over here the price of the printers, what will happen? Decrease. That means, as we say, the demand of what? of ink will increase, so it will move from D1 again to D2. It will shift the demand curve to the right. Again, the consumer preference. If they started to prefer certain product over here, increase in the demand for a certain product over here, they start to prefer certain product, that will shift the demand curve over here from D1 to D2, it will shift to the right. Again, if you're expected future prices to increase, what will happen? The demand for the product right now, it will increase because they are trying to protect themselves from the increases in the prices. So over here, what's happened? You are trying to avoid high prices by trying to buy the product right now. So this will cause the demand curve to move to the right. Okay. Okay. Why they shift demand curve? Where there is a shift in the demand curve. For example, over here, if there is an increase in the income and the product is a normal, that means what will happen? The consumer spend more of their higher income on the goods. So the consumer will start to do what? They will try to consume more of what? Of their income at this certain products. Just a minute, let me to erase this line. Okay, and use the highlighter. Okay, so over here, when your income is increased, what will happen? Your demand for the normal goods will increase. Why it increase? It will cause a shift to the right because the consumers spend more of their higher income on these products. Okay, the price of the substitute goods. There is increase in the price of the substitute goods. Let's say there is increase in the price of the Pepsi. What will happen over here? That means the consumer will buy less of the substitute and more of what? Of this goods. Now the price of the Pepsi will that means it's increased. People will buy more of what? Of Coca-Cola. So over here, this will cause a shift to what? To the right. Taste of the goods. When they start to prefer certain goods over here, okay, it's increase in the taste of the goods. They prefer certain products. So over here, the consumers are willing to buy a larger quantity of the goods at every price. So they are willing to buy more of this product at every given price. The population over here as well. If there is increase in the population, additional consumers result in a greater quantity demand at every price. More people over here, that means more demand. The expected prices of the goods in the future, if there's increase in the expected prices, the consumers will buy more of the goods today in order to protect themselves from the higher prices in the future. Okay, so over here, as we can see, as we explained over here, that there is what? An increase in the demand and shift in the demand. Okay, what does an increase in the demand mean? When there is increase in the demand, that means it will cause a shift of the demand curve. So the demand curve, basically, it will shift from D1, it will move to D2 over here. So an increase in the demand shift the demand curve to the right because there is an increase. So it will shift to the right over here. At the price of the quantity, demanded increase, as we can see over here. At this price, a price of 8, there is what? The demand is 46 when we move to the new demand curve. Previously, at this point, at the old demand curve, the quantity was 30, and now the quantity is 46. So over here, the initial price, which is 8, there is an excess demand over here. There is more demand because as we can see over here, from point A to B, there is increase in the demand. There is an excess demand and the quantity demanded from point B exceed the quantity supplied at point A. So there is more demand. The demand is for 46 products, and what is available in the market is only less, which is 30 products. Now let us to move to the second thing, which is the excess demand caused the price to rise. and the equilibrium to be restored. Now over here, let us to look at where is the new equilibrium point. The new equilibrium point, okay, which is the intersect between the supply and demand, which is at point C over here. As we look over here, the equilibrium quantity is equal to what? To 10. This is the equilibrium quantity. And over here, and so the equilibrium price is 10. The equilibrium quantity is 40. So the excess demand caused the prices to rise and the equilibrium to restored at point C. To summarize, the increase in the demand, when there is increase in the demand, increase the equilibrium price to 10 and increase the equilibrium quantity to what? To 40. So when there is increase in the demand and there is a shift, you can see always what we will have over here. There is increase in the price and decrease in the quantity demanded. So it used to be the price at 8 previously and the quantity demanded as 30. Now when there's a shift in the demand curve, so over here we'll have the new equilibrium point at point C. The new equilibrium point at point C, the equilibrium quantity equal to 40,000 and the equilibrium price is $10. Okay. Now, what are the factors that cause the demand to decrease or shift the demand curve to the left? As we explained previously, now previously when we talk about the income, when your income increase, we said that your demand for the normal product will increase. But over here, the opposite, when it will decrease. Now, when your income decrease, what will happen? Are you going to buy more of the normal products? Of course, no. So over here, this will cause what? A decrease in the demand curve and it will shift to the left. So we'll have, this is the new equilibrium price. The same thing. If your income increase, so what will happen over here? The demand for the inferior goods. Are you going to buy inferior goods? Of course, no. You want to buy branded, luxurious product, more of these products. Okay, so if your income increase, over here, what will happen to the inferior goods? Demand will decrease and this will shift the demand curve to the left. The price of the substitute goods. Now, if the price of the substitute goods decrease, okay, what will happen over here? That means the demand for the good, what will happen? Will decrease. So, for example, if the prices of Pepsi decrease, okay, so what will happen? What will happen to the demand of the Coca-Cola? Will decrease because people will buy more Pepsi. The price of the complementary goods. If the price of the complementary goods increase, for example, the price of the printers increase, that means what will happen over here? There is increase in the price of the printers. People will stop buying printers and that means the demand for the ink will decrease and this will cause a shift to the left for the demand curve. Consumer preference. Now the consumer stop their preference for a certain product. They stop liking to buy Toyota cars. So what will happen over here? The demand will decrease and this will shift the demand curve as well to the left. The expected future prices. If I'm expecting the future prices to decrease, that means what? What will happen over here? Are you going to buy the product right now at a higher price? Of course, you will stop. You will postpone your purchases to the future when the prices goes down. So what will happen to the prices right now, or what happened to the demand right now? It will drop and it will shift to the left. Okay, why do they shift the demand curve? Why do we shift the demand curve? Let us look over here. If there is an increase in your income over here, what will happen to the demand for the inferior goods? Consumers spend less of the higher income on these goods. Now over here, when your income increase, are you going to buy a second-hand car or a second-hand mobile phone? Of course, no. So the demand for the inferior goods will decrease. The price of the complementary goods over here, the consumers buy less of the complementary goods and less of these goods. So over here, this will cause a shift to the left because there is increase in the price of the complementary goods. So they will stop buying your product because they will move to the second product. Okay, what does a decrease in demand mean? A decrease in demand shifts the demand curve to the left. Of course, as we said, if the demand decreases, that means there is a shift, a leftward shift to the demand curve. It will move in this direction. At each price, quantity demanded decrease, as we can see over here. Now, previously at point A, at a price of 8, they are buying what? 30 units. Now, at the price of 8, with the new demand curve, they are buying how many units? 14 units. So at each price, the quantity demanded decrease. The quantity demanded decrease at each single price. Each single price over here, there is a decrease in the demand. Okay. So at the initial price at 8, so at the initial price over here, which is at $8, there is excess supply. That means there is more supply over here than quantity demanded. So there's excess supply with the quantity supplied at point A. So over here, there is more supply than what is demanded in the market. So over here, point A exceeding the quantity demanded at point B. The excess supply caused the price to drop. Of course, when there's an excess supply, no one is buying this product. So what will happen over here? By default, the prices will decrease. So by default over here, what will happen to the prices? Okay, as we can see over here, previously, okay, the equilibrium point was at over here at point A. Now, where is the intersect between the demand and the supply with the new demand curve is over here at point C. Now, to compare, previously, the quantity demanded, the equilibrium price was 8. Now the equilibrium price is 6. Previously, the equilibrium quantity was 30. Now the equilibrium quantity is 20. So over here, to summarize, the decrease in the demand decreased the equilibrium price to 6 and decreased the equilibrium quantity to 20,000 pizza. Now we'll talk about the factors that shift the supply curve. These are the most important variables that shift the supply curve. First of all, we'll talk about the price of the input. Now, when we talk about the price of the input, that's mean the input that we use them to come up with the final product. For example, the cost that it's included in the product. For example, the raw material that I need them to produce this product, labor, or for example, either it can be fixed or a variable cost that are considered to be a part of the product. Or for example, over here, when there is increase in the price of the labor, that means it will increase the price of the product itself. Secondly, technological changes. Technological changes, that mean a positive or a negative change in the ability of the firm to produce a given level of output with a given quantity of an input. That's mean over here, now if they came up with a new technology that they can produce more product over here, for example, the old machine, their capacity to produce 1,500 a product per an hour, now they came up with a new machine that can produce 100,000 units per hour. So over here, because of this technological changes, that will shift the supply curve. The price of the substitute in production. Now over here, when there's a substitutes in the production, they produce something else. So over here, it will cause a shift in the supply curve as well. The number of the firms in the market. The more the number of the firms in the market, that's mean what? The more the supply. Imagine there is like, previously we have only 3 factories that produce, for example, laptops. Now the number increased to 6 factories that produce the laptop. That means over here the supply of the laptops will increase in the market. Expected future prices. If expected future prices over here, we're expecting future prices to increase. That means what will happen to the supply curve at the beginning will decrease, so it will shift. When the prices increase, then they will try to provide all this or to supply all these products into the market. Tax or subsidies. Now over here, when the tax is when the government impose tax. The higher the tax, that means over here, the higher is the cost of the production, the higher is the price of the product. That means will decrease the supply. When we have a subsidies, when the government started to subsidize certain product, for example, the bread, or for example, the petrol over here, like previously, the petrol was subsidized by the government. So over here, the prices of the oil was less and was more available. There's more supply in the market. Now, when they remove the subsidies, the prices went up. Shift the supply curve. Now this is supply curve. This is the first supply curve over here, which is the main one. We call it supply S1. Either it will shift over here to the right, or it will shift to the left. So when it will increase the supply, it will shift over here to the right. When it will decrease, it will shift to the left, either downward or upward. It will shift when there is increase or a decrease. So if it shifts upward, that means there is a decrease in the supply. When it shifts downward, that means there is increase in the supply. If it shifts upward, that means there is a decrease in the supply. Now, what increased the supply? Now over here, the wages. Let us look at the wages. When the prices of the wages or the salaries goes down, that means over here, what will happen? It will be less costly to produce the product. So over here, you can hire more people to produce the product. So over here, what will cause a shift in the supply curve to the right. So the supply curve will increase because you can produce more and more over here. If there is a decrease in the price of the material or the capital, like the machines, equipment, all these things, or the raw materials that use them to produce a product, as well over here, it will be cheaper for you to produce the product. So this will cause a shift to the right. That means supply will increase over here because there's a shift to the right. When there is increase in the technological advance, that means there is more technology, a new technology came up to the market. That means we increase our production. We can produce more products, more and more by time. So over here, this as well will shift the supply curve from S1 to S2. When the government started to subsidize certain products, for example, when they started to subsidize, for example, the bread or the meat in the market, okay, over here, what will happen? Supply, there will be more supply in the market of these products. The expected future prices. Now, if I'm expecting future prices to decrease, what will happen right now? That means I will start to sell more now because in the future, the prices will go down. So over here, when the expected future prices to decrease, that means the supply will increase now, and later on will happen the opposite. Number of producer, if the number of producer increase, that means the product will be more available in the market, there will be more supply, everyone will supply the products that are available in the markets. Now, what decreased the supply? There's increase in the wages. Now, previously, when there is a decrease in the wages, there is more production. Now, over here, when you are paying high salaries, that means what? The opposite will take place over here. So over here, it will be costly for you to hire more workers. So what will happen? The supply curve, it will shift to the left from S0 to S1. price of the materials or a capital. Now over here, if there's increase in the price of the material or the capital equipment or machineries and all these things, or the price for the raw material increase, that means it will be costly for you to produce the product because you have to pay more for the raw material. Your marginal profit will be less. So over here, what will happen? Will decrease the supply curve, and this will shift it to the left. Tax. If the government impose tax, more tax, that means over here that they have to pay more tax for the government over here. That means will decrease the supply because it's considered to be as a cost for them. If I'm expecting the future prices to increase as well over here, what I will do, I will decrease my supply right now because I would like to sell them later on a higher prices. If the number of the producer in the market decrease, that means I will sell less of the product. There's less product available in the market right now. Why they shift supply? If there is an increase in the price of the input, as we mentioned over here, the cost of production, what will happen over here? The cost of producing the goods will rise. Because of the cost of producing the goods will rise, that means it will shift to the left. The price of the substitute in a production over here, that means more of the substitutes is produced and less of the goods is produced. So over here will shift the supply curve to the left. The expected future prices of the production, if there's increase in the expected future prices of the production, that means less of the good will be produced today in order to take advantage of the higher prices in the future. Shift of the demand versus the movement along the demand curve. The same thing over here. As we mentioned previously, when there is a change in the prices, that means it will cause change in the quantity demanded. That means there is only a movement on the demand curve. A change in the demand is not the same in change in the quantity demanded. For example, in this example, a higher price caused what? Because the price moved from P0 to P1, what happened to the quantity demanded over here? Decreased. So over here, in this example, because of the higher price, caused what? A lower quantity demanded. Change determined of the demand, like if there's factors that affect the demand, if there's one of these factors that affect the demand other than the price, will cause a change in the demand. That means a shift or a shift in the demand. That means the curve will move from one point to the other. If one of other or all these factors that we mentioned them previously, that will cause a shift. A movement when there is only change in the quantity demanded. But change in the demand because of the previous factors, like for example, income or the type of related products or population or other these things will cause a shift. But if there is change in the quantity demanded, that means will cause a movement in the demand curve. Change in the demand versus the change in the quantity demanded. Now over here, when the demand shift to the right, demand increase, right? As we mentioned, if it's shift to the right, that means the demand will increase. And we can see it will increase at every single point along the new demand curve. Over here, you can see over here, what happened? There is increase in the price. Over here, increase in the price as well. So over here, this caused a quantity demanded to be greater than it was prior to the shift for each and every price level. As we can see over here. Now to summarize, change in the price of a goods or a service lead to what? Change in the quantity demanded. If there's change in the price of a good or a service, that means it will cause change in the quantity demanded. That means a movement along the curve, which is moving from one point to the other along the same curve. Change in income preference or price of the goods or services lead to what? Change in the demand. When there is a change in the demand, that means there is a shift. So it will shift either to the right or to the left. It depends. Either it will increase or decrease. Change in the quantity supply versus change in the supply. The same idea over here. A change in the price causes a change in the quantity supplied. A movement along a single supply curve. If there's a change in the price, that means it will cause only a movement, like we're moving from point A to B. There is only a movement when there's a change in the supply, which is change in the quantity supplied. In this case over here, B, a change in the supply caused by a change in something other than the price of the product, which caused a shift for the entire supply curve. For example, an increase in the supply shift the supply curve from S1 to S2 in this graph. Like over here, we can see there is move from S1 to S2. For any given price, for example, at $6, a larger quantity is supplied to 25,000 pizza at a price of C instead of 20,000 at point of A. The price required to generate any given quantity decrease. For example, the price required to generate 20,000 pizza dropped from 6 at point A to 5 at point D. Thank you very much. We reached to the end of the presentation over here for the supply and demand. Make sure that you understand what is the meaning of supply and demand, the definitions, the relationship between the price and the quantity for each one, supply and demand. You have to know when we will have a movement and when we will have a shift in the supply and demand curve over here, and you know the factors that cause a shift of the demand and supply curve. Make sure that you go through the slide, try to solve some of the problems which is available in the slides available in Moodle, and thank you very much. See you the next class.